Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Yes, good morning, and welcome to you all to today's webinar. I am Gifty Apia, as the flyer says, and I will be your moderator for today. So, for the first timers, um, we welcome you, a very special welcome to you as well. This is a platform that the UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce puts together, bringing together the public and its members like yourselves, and then people in the tax profession as well, to dialogue on pertinent tax issues of the time. And then together we try to tease out what the issues are and come up with some solutions. So that's what we plan to do today. Our topic for today is women in tax, enhancing financial inclusion in Ghana. And so let me try and warm us up into the topic. Now, we are at a special time, and I feel like I'm in a privileged position because I've been a woman for decades and I've paid taxes directly from my pocket and been a tax practitioner for also over a decade. So I feel this is a good place for me to be. And over time, what has become very clear to me is that there's a lot of things that I think as women we can do in the space of finance and tax. We want to change the narrative of where people think is a male dominated space, right? So we'll tease out some of those issues as we go along. Um, the other also has to do with tax measures and the tax proposals or laws as we have it. As long as I've practiced, I haven't seen any explicit provisions in the tax laws that is gender biased, but it's just a consciousness. And this is to our policymakers, right? That we have to be intentional about it, be conscious such that the measures we put in place do not have any unintended consequences of being more burdensome to women. So that's a discussion to have. We'll tease out those areas as well. And I don't think we could have had a better timing I think women won this time for 2024, where we are expecting some tax waivers on sanitary towels. So from 2024, it's expected that our sanitary towels that are locally manufactured are zero rated for VAT. And at the same time, import duties will be waived as well on raw materials we import to locally produced sanitary towels. So I think that's a win for women and in tax as well. We have Mary Main put it in a very fine way. She's the ATAP Deputy Executive Secretary. And she's saying that it is important for women to be in tax to ensure that the bigger part of society is compliant, to realize the public good, and to create policies that advantage women and avoid regressive tax. So, to us all, it's a case of women having a seat at the table, being very comfortable with that dialogue on tax and finance so that we can try and soften some of the discussions, right? Because men are known to be a lot more about the numbers and being logical with the reason, but we come up with our soft side and problem solving expertise to balance some of the arguments around tax policies and measures. So that's also an area that we'll try to dig deeper as we discuss today. Some also raised the point, and it's become a long time argument, right? We know that there are billions of Ghana cedis that are lost or that are not being gathered from the informal sector. And it's become a big issue as to how do we broaden the tax net in the informal sector, right? The other estimate is that it's estimated that women form actually majority. Almost about 90% of the informal sector population is made of women. So putting the two together, the intersection of women and tax, we have a lot of role to play, right? We form the majority, and there isn't enough coming from that sector. What role can we play? What can we do to change that narrative? And then, of course, we have one of the goals of today is also get you a lot more, give you a lot more arsenal, give you explore together what the tax environment looks like for you, especially for women-led entrepreneurs, right? And it becomes a case of do we know our obligations? What does the tax system looks like? What are some of the challenges? Are there complications? Are the tax laws simple enough for an average woman entrepreneur? So we will try and tease out all those factors. And at the end of the day, I think the goal would be that we become comfortable talking about tax. We get a seat at the table. We play a much deeper role. We own the process and understand what our obligations are under the tax laws, so that we would minimize our exposure. So with that, I would want to introduce my panel who would help us do justice to the topic. And we have a very well assembled panel. In no particular order, I would introduce them, but I would want to, at least for now, indulge the audience that we want to have your take or your view on tax. So in the chat box, just give me one word that comes to mind when you hear of tax. So the answer, nobody should write tax, please. That's the literal answer. But what comes to mind when you hear of tax? Just a word. And we'll come back to what you list out there. And then as my speakers talk, we'll try and infuse some of the feel that comes of the answers that you give, to see if we can address some of the concerns from there. So with that, I'll come to my panel. I'll introduce them in no particular order. We have Ifwa Cranton.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ifwa, and thank you, and you're welcome. Ifwa is the co-founder and managing partner of Cranton and Cranton Legal Advisors. So Ifwa, thanks for coming, and you're welcome.
Thank you, Gifty. And thank you, everyone, for joining this morning.
Thank you. And then next we have Vivian Shika Omalumo. Vivian is the head of the Community One Taxpayer Service Center of the Ghana Revenue Authority. So Vivian, we are glad to have you. Welcome as well.
Hello.
Vivian.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, thank you for engaging me, and we are here to actually delve into the issues, as Madam Gifty just said. Please make time for us, and we'll also elaborate on so many things and bring clarity to issues that has been bothering you. Thank you so much.
I will start with you, Vivian.
Okay.
Vivian, because tax is what you eat and breathe on a normal day. That's your standard work life. So we want to have your take on what you think about the topic on women and tax, topic around financial inclusion, maybe just your general view. And while you are at it, just give us your brief view of what the tax system looks like. Vivian, over to you.
Yes, as I have been already introduced, the name is Madam Vivian Shika Omalumo. I am with the Ghana Revenue Authority, and basically, when I saw the topic, I was like, this is the first time I'm seeing something that was women in tax. It's always limited to maybe not gender as such, but for GRA, I would say that we have the mandate to administer the tax, collects the domestic revenue for national development, and our tax laws are not gender biased. It covers everybody. So we need to actually delve in and see where the women will fit in to bring out the best in them, because most of them, as we have rightly, the moderator has said, we find most women in the informal sector, that is the micro, small, and medium scale enterprises. And that is one area that basically constitutes about 70% of our tax paying public. However, revenue from the informal sector only constitutes about 5% of the total revenue that GRA mobilizes on an annual basis. So it's very, very important. If women constitute more than 70% of the tax-paying public in the informal sector, then we need to really address the issues and see where the challenges are, how we can get them all on board so that we can maximize revenue from that sector, especially with the women. Because we know our women are all into business. They do a lot of work because they are always building capacity. They are actually engaged in so many income generating activities. But there's a need to reach out to them with a lot of education, and so that they will not shy away from GRE offices, because I guess today so many people will come up with issues about their phobia with the GRE office. But we are even moving away from having the physical structure to the digital space where we have everybody coming on board for ease of doing business in Ghana, for the convenience of the taxpayer. You don't necessarily have to visit the tax offices. So I guess most of the phobia would have to be dealt with in a way with information from us, that is educating the public about the services that we are rendering to make it very easy for the tax-paying public to comply voluntarily. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And those were interesting things about phobia.
Ifwa, could you kindly come in, give us your opening remarks, and then we move on to Nina. Thank you.
Okay, so with regard to me and this topic, I think I thank the UK GCC for inviting me to this. I'm here today more as a business owner, a woman-owned business, than as a lawyer. The challenges that are faced by women in their businesses are not limited only to that gender. As we've said, or as Vivian has said, the Ghana tax system really is not focused on gender or have specific gender-related provisions. The Constitution requires that we all pay our taxes. When we travel and go to foreign countries, we are pleased with the level of development that we see. But as progressively taxation is being brought to the forefront, sometimes we feel as if the GRA may be harassing us. But the point remains that paying our taxes, regardless of the sector in which we operate, whether we're women or men, is a constitutional requirement. The issue is that how do we make the process less restrictive or less challenging to make the payment of taxes more seamless? For instance, going digital, as we've seen the GRA and the Ministry of Finance pushing forward with those elements, they'll make it easier for us to collect taxes, especially from the informal sector, which, as you know, makes up quite a huge percentage of Ghana's GDP. And I guess those are my opening remarks, and I'm looking forward to this discussion and what we're all going to learn through this communication this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ifwa. And am I clear now?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Yes, thank you very much. I have no idea what's happening today. Thank you so much, Ifwa. So what I hear Ifwa say is Ifwa talked, of course, with her lawyer hat on, as well, even though she doesn't want us to go there too much, but it's a constitutional mandate. We can't run away from that. And that's the only reason why you pay the tax without asking why, because you are constitutionally mandated. So thank you very much, Ifwa. I will now move to Nina. Nina, you are from the private sector, and I like that you will talk from your heart. Let me put it that way, because you are not technocrats in terms of taxes, but at least you come into contact with that in your everyday business career life. From your perspective, what do you make of this topic and taxes in general for businesses?
Gifty, I lost you there a bit, but I guess being the last panelist left, can you just repeat the question? I just got the tail end of.
Okay. My question is from your perspective, looking at it from a lens of a non-technical tax angle, because you are at the helm of operations, but you sort of are able to, you delve into tax and finance with your functions as well at work. So from your perspective, what is your take on the topic and the general tax system from how you see it?
Thank you very much, Gifty, and thank you to the UK GCC for inviting me. I own and run two businesses. One is a travel agency that works with all airlines, and then one is in partnership, which actually represents one international airline in Ghana. I work in a space that is dominated by women in terms of the workforce, and to a large extent, the ownership of travel agencies as well.
Yeah, so I think the question, using that, carrying on with that, what's your take in terms of your general views around the discussions around?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think we lost you a bit. So if you can take that in terms of your general view, looking at with all the experience and ownership of businesses that you have.
Sure. So what I was saying was this: the space that I work in is a space that is dominated by women in terms of their workforce and the business ownership. And so a forum like this, which we get to discuss how our tax contribution and we comply with tax regulations of doing business in Ghana, and especially in the travel space, in terms of commissions, in terms of taxes that are collected by travel agents on behalf of the airline as mandated, on behalf of the government as mandated by the airline, helps us to understand, and for the participants of my industry to be able to work well and contribute to the development of the country. Yes, what I look forward to in this process is to be able to own the process, which is something that Gifty I got from you in the intro when it comes to tax process in doing business here.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So I think let me come back to you, Ifwa, from where Nina ended, right? She's also coming from the SME entrepreneurship space, and I think you also said there to some extent. What is your general take with respect to entity setup? Do you think it's something that is encouraging? Do you see challenges when SMEs are trying to set up entities in Ghana? It's also, I'm trying to also get some view from your company secretarial experience, from where you sit. How do you see that for SMEs?
Well, I guess progressively, I mean, the Office of the Registrar of Companies now, which was formerly the Registrar General's Department, is trying to make it easier for companies to register businesses. So whether you're registering as a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a company limited by shares or unlimited, that is your first port of call, and that's the place to go. Recently, I'm trying to advise a client who was trying to register. I found out the Register of Companies now has a fast track process where you can actually pay a premium fee and get your registration done quickly. So for those who are contemplating registering new businesses, know that there is a premium service that is now put in place. But apart from that, generally, setting up a business can sometimes be daunting for people, especially when it comes to the fact that, yes, they need to get the directors, shareholders, get their paperwork in place. But the additional thing now with the connection of the TIN number to everything is that the minute you complete your registration at the RGD, you have to go ahead and go and get your GRA registration completed. So then that immediately puts you on the GRA system to start paying your taxes, VAT and other services service taxes that you need to pay. So the process of incorporation or registration itself, depending on who's advising you through the process, it could be easy or it could be lengthy and complicated if you don't know what you're doing. But on average, I think generally it's easy to register a company in Ghana. The connection then is the issue of taxes. And my personal challenge on the inception sector is once you do that initial registration and you're trying to set up with GRA, and this is a part that I think I'll throw to Vivian as a challenge, is that issue of the initial tax assessment. If I'm a new entity and I haven't earned any revenue and I'm now trying to set up, And then the GRA gives me an initial estimated tax assessment based on what they think I am going to do. I think that part can be quite challenging, and it may stop people from initially trying to do the GRA registration because they will be going out of pocket when they haven't even started running their business. So that's my initial comment.
Okay, but thank you. And you mentioned premium service. We hope it is not too burdensome for an entrepreneur that's going on with the RGD registration. It's premium, but is it manageable in terms of the fee charged?
As of last week, the company I registered, I had to pay 1,000 cedis as the premium fee.
Okay.
But the benefit it gives you is that in 48 hours, within 48 hours, you will get your registration certificate. And I think sometimes business owners would rather even pay that to make sure that they have their certificate and they are moving on with what they want to do, compared to the back and forth that sometimes can even take you as much as a whole month to get what you need to do done.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's a general trend, right? We see that happening in DVLA, see that happening in passport
Yeah.
office. So it looks like it's a trend. Hopefully, it is still. I mean, it's efficient enough to be worth the amount, right? Yes. So I think let me give Vivian a chance, right? Vivian, if we had thrown something along when people are registering for fresh registrants of their businesses, they are asking for clearance. I mean, from GRA. GRA now gives them assessments. What do you say about that?
As you will be aware, I know this is a very thorny issue for most taxpayers, especially those who come in to register after having gained their registration certificates from the ORC. But GRA is basically moving away from that type of assessments. We now have the self-assessments, which is the default assessment. So at the point of registration, basically we share information with the ORC. So we'll have the basic information that ORC has also on our system. So there are just some few other questions that the interviewer will put across to the interviewee, who is the taxpayer coming in, and then they would both agree. If, let's say, there are some businesses that indeed, even before they go to the ORC to register, they would have started operations. They would know how viable the business is before they even go in and register. Most businesses, coming from where I'm sitting, there are a lot of businesses that have already started before even going in to register. But for those who have not started, it is to know the sector that the person is going into. And if it's possible, the registration is the first thing that is done. And then you educate the taxpayer on the need to keep proper records, because it's out of the records that the person will file the returns and subsequently pay the taxes. So at the start, the person would not need to pay anything. If that is the first time the person is now even setting out to operate. But for those who've already been in business, we have the law supports the fact that we can even go back 6 years to assess the person. So if you do your little interview and you are able to identify that the person is already well established, but had just gone to regularize the operations by registering at ORC, then you can go back a little, assess the person, or depending on what the situation is, agree with the taxpayer on what the assessment should be. So the taxpayer is going to self-assess, and if there's anything to be paid by virtue of the quarterly payment, the person pays and then go ahead to obtain the tax clearance certificate online. But where the person hasn't done anything, I basically tell everybody that, for example, I can state the freight forwarders, for their type of business, without going through the ORC, without going through GRA, and then having their license from that's GAPOHA, Ghana Ports and Harbour Authority, and having it from the GRA Customs Division, they cannot embark on any business venture until they get all these things, and it takes time. So for such category of taxpayers, when they come in to register, it is not an issue about assessing the person initially to pay before the person will be able to obtain a tax clearance certificate. No, that would not be fair. We are talking of fairness. And those are some of the issues. Those days are gone where the taxpayer comes, GRA, whosoever is at the front desk will want to assess and then ask the person to pay a deposit before proceeding with acquisition of the tax clearance certificate. No. Now, it is basically not that. It depends on the nature of business, what the person has done in the past, what the person is currently doing. If the person there's evidence to support the fact that the person has already been operating all this while, then by virtue of the law, you can assess the person if you have the information. But if not, the person can take the clearance even without paying in the current year. And you have to give the person the needed education. There will be some verification checklist for the person to follow and know what is expected of him or her in terms of keeping credible records, in terms of filing, registering the tax types that the person would definitely engage in, like the VAT, the person meets the threshold. If it's withholding tax, which is ad hoc, and PAYE, definitely the person is engaging people. And I'll always come to the point that most people will come and tell you that I'm now starting. But when you delve further, they would have gone to SNIT to register, and they have a limit at SNIT for employees. So as soon as you register as SNIT, I also take it that then, of course, you have employees, you've engaged them, and you need to also pay the commensurate taxes to us. That means withhold the PAYE from the payments of salaries to the employees that you have indicated as people that you have employed and you have registered them as SNIT. So it actually involves a little bit of delving, investigations, and the interviewer's skill to, bring out this information. Then it will help you to know what exactly, whether the taxpayer must self-assess to proceed, or you, the officer, would have to go back and assess as the law requires. I hope, Efwa, this answers your question.
If we're in the audience, yes, I'm sure that part of the audience had the same questions.
Yes.
If is not, so that means she's fine. But I think the message is clear, right? For the audience as well, it's case by case basis. I think that's Vivian's point. So don't take a no or a yes as the answer. Go explain yourself what your situation is, and at least there's a window to allow for you to go on when you have no proof of already starting a business or making income. So Vivian, I think that's clear. And so let me move to you now, Nina. We have perspectives from Ifwa and Vivian from where this. I want you to take it from your lens, being an entrepreneur, being at the helm of affairs of a privately owned business. What do you think have been your challenges when it comes to taxes? You might have interfaced taxes one way or the other, your employees' GRA. What have been your main struggles?
So as an employer, you would have staff. Sometimes the staff may be entry-level staff. They may not have registered. They may just have finished national service. While they're doing national service, it's just the allowance that is given them.
So maybe Nina had to go, but let me come to you, Ifwa, with the same line of question, right? What has been, you have clients, right? What has been the struggles, you hear them, or even from where you sit?
Well, I think the main challenge for small business is the issue of cash flow, right? Small businesses would typically somewhat struggle with cash that is freely available, especially for the service delivery sector where you've provided a service and the client hasn't paid you yet. Now, when you look at the VAT system, for instance, you've issued an invoice to the client. You have the next month to make sure that you file the VAT in relation to that invoice you generated. Now, what happens when that client has not paid you by the deadline you're expected to pay your tax? The GRA expects you, regardless of whether you've received the money or not, to come and pay the tax to them. I find that particularly an unfair process, because if the client hasn't paid me for, let's say, 3 to 4 months, sometimes even a year, depending on who this client is, and the most what do you call it, guilty party in terms of delayed payments is the government, right? So if you generated an invoice to a government entity who hasn't paid you for 6 months, but because I'm the diligent taxpayer and I've generated a VAT invoice, GRA tells me I need to pay a penalty and I need to cough up the VAT. So where am I getting that money from? If the government hasn't paid me for, let's say, 6 months, and the GRA then expects me to come up with the VAT element of that payment, which I am yet to receive, what does that create? It creates a situation where I'm supposed to go and touch my company's funds, which should be, for instance, be used to pay my rent or be used to pay my salaries, to pay GRA. I particularly find that aspect to be very challenging. And I think that is some of probably one of the classic situations with regard to taxes that businesses will encounter. The other one being the payment of corporate income tax ahead of time. Now the GRA has tried to bring in place this quarterly forecasted payment. So at the beginning of the year, they estimate the amount of revenue they think you're going to earn in the year, and on a quarterly basis, generate an invoice for you to pay, with the expectation that at the end of the financial year, let's say in this year for 2024 April, when you have finished preparing your financial statements and it turns out that you ended up paying more taxes, you can set it off against your corporate income tax. I mean, yes, it's a way to keep us all on our toes, but depending once again on that small business's cash flow, it can be a bit restrictive. So those two issues are my key challenges with regard to small businesses and the payment of taxes.
Okay. If I thank you, so mainly cash flow issues. So thank you, Nina. I don't know if it's do you is it yeah?
I'm even struggling to get a full sentence from the other panelists as they actually speak.
Oh,
Yes,
you
but
sound perfect. So yeah,
right.
you sound very clear now. So let's give it a try,
Okay.
and see if you have from where you sit. I think you started talking. You can continue in terms of the challenges from your perspective in the tax system and entrepreneurs.
I will pick up from where if I left off on VAT. So one of the things is that
Okay.
in 2018, the government was overt in announcing that VAT on domestic airline tickets were to be scrapped, but they were silent on international airline tickets. Mm-hmm. So you sell a ticket to a client, especially if it's a new client, you invoice them, and in paying you, or they attempt to they ask for a VAT invoice on the ticket or want to withhold tax on the entire cost of the ticket. Now the cost of a ticket will have two components: revenue to the airline and taxes that are inbuilt. So there are taxes in there that are collected for the host country, being Ghana, because most of the airlines come here upon the invitation of the government.
All right, so let me dovetail into that. Let me come to you, Vivian. I'm sure Nina would join us soon. So I think Vivian,
Yes.
we've talked about challenges. So we are tasking you. We are hoping that you can put it there. And I'm sure some are not new to you because you deal with the same entrepreneurs. What will you say most entrepreneurs, as they approach you with your interactions with them, what are some of the struggles they are having in the tax system from your point of view? And then maybe the way around some of the recommendations you've given them, so that our audience can walk away with what to do differently from now.
Thank you very much, Gifty. Just like what Ifwa talked about, it's one major challenge that most taxpayers have. and issuing Commissioner General's invoice to their clients, and basically for credits, supplies or something, and then they take a long time. Maybe they've scheduled 30 days with the intention of having to file in the subsequent month whatever was sold in the previous month, but the clients default in payment. And the law requires that whatsoever invoices have been issued for any transaction, they are to file returns in respect of these transactions and then pay the taxes accordingly. But that is the position of the law. But the law against has a provision that, in fact, if you have a challenge with even filing, you must apply to the Commissioner General by due dates and state reasons why you are unable to file and ask for extension. The Commissioner General, who is represented by the officers at the various taxpayer service centers, would review your letter, and then if it merits it, they would grant an extension to file. Likewise, there's a separate provision for payment of taxes. So if the person has already filed, has no issue, but the payment is a challenge, all they need to do is also apply to the GRA, the tax service centers, and state reasons for why they are requesting for extension. And then at that office, extension can also be given. Internally, we have policies where the TSEs have up to a maximum of 4 months. They can spread it out. We have other levels of approval, some 6, up to even the Commissioner General, who has 12 months. So when they apply before due dates or by due date, and this is given, it gives them a leeway to be able to pursue the monies from the defaulting clients, and then by the time it is up, they come in and pay. And even if they have a challenge, if let's say the TSE gives them the 4 months duration within which to settle the amount, they are not able to recover their liability before the end of the period. They must come and then request for extension. The law gives us up to a period of 12 months, but for the TSEs, it is in 4 months. Then it can be escalated to the next level. But I think most of the people find it very difficult to just go by applying for the extension. Or from what I see at my office, this education is given to many, but you go onto the system, still, I don't know whether they work against or they hope that definitely the person will pay, but they rush in to file. Most of them file. But in terms of paying the taxes by due date, they fail to do it. And they will not reach out to the office. And you have to pursue. And as soon as they fail to file by the due date, then we'll have to kick in all the notices, and for filing, it's penalty, for payment, non-payment, it is interest. Then all these processes must be, must kick in so that we can recover the amounts, because we are working with certain business processes and procedures, and it's definitely based on law, and we need to recoup the amount for governments to be able to carry out its developmental agenda. So it's a little difficult for the VAT. We appreciate it, but that is it. It's a general provision that binds to that. Whatever transaction that takes place and you've issued the invoice, at the end, because when you issue it in this month, let's say month of November, you are expected to file by the last working day of December. Getting to that date, if you know you are not able to recover, with all efforts to recover the money from the client is not feasible, go ahead and put in a letter requesting for extension. And the provision is there. It is their right that we hear them, we review it, and if they merit it, we grant it to them to make life easier. We know also about cash flow challenges. And for those who are actually into heavy transactions, that when they withhold, if not for VAT, VAT is also a withholding, but if they withhold the withholding tax from the transaction, the principal amounts, and it's going to a capital sum, and it's going to cost them, they can also apply to the Commissioner General for granting of exemption from the withholding taxes, so that they do not suffer those ones, because if basically all your transactions are suffering withholding tax, it affects the cash flow, as they have rightly said. And it might not augur well for business, smooth running of operations. And then Nina started talking about the tickets. And I think from what I heard, she had issues about the international airline where the clients that they handle, basically corporate clients, are requesting for VAT. They are also requesting for if they could be exempted from the withholding taxes. I think the answers are provided for what Nina, the challenges that Nina brought up, would also do for that. They can, if they know they have a lot of corporate clients who are always requesting, I mean, if possible, to try and resolve the issue of cash flow and how to go about the equation. They can also apply for exemption from the Commissioner General. It is not limited to just maybe international taxpayers who are multinationals or the rest. Every taxpayer can, I mean, the provision is available to everyone. They can also apply and have that exemption from withholding taxes, because currently there's a provision that Commissioner General has also issued out a directive that where a taxpayer has has actually spent money on buying taxable goods or taxable activities, and there's no evidence of the Commissioner General's invoice to show as proof of having spent that money, the person might not be allowed, if it's a deduction, that deduction. So I think everybody must ensure that all these things are there are provisions. So all you need to do is, I think Nina has been in this business for a long time. This shouldn't be a very big this thing. She should approach her TSC, that is the Tax Service Center, and engage them and see how best they can help her to overcome some of the challenges. Yes, as you rightly asked, IFWA has also talked about the VAT. That is one major challenge for most of the taxpayers. But others are not even aware of the need to self-assess. Or self-assessment is now the default assessment under the tax law. We also have a point where taxpayers are expected to self-assess by the end of the first quarter. And we are not only looking at the small taxpayers, we can have medium taxpayers who have their own accounting date. So it's a broad thing that by the end of their first quarter, their first quarter may be different from the fiscal year that we have, that's January to March, and we are expecting that everybody at the end of March must have filed their self-assessment and pay the first, what is due for the first quarter. If your accounting date differs from government's fiscal year, the normal January to December, if that accounting date differs, then it behoves on you to provide file your self-assessment estimate by the end of your first quarter, and then pay the first quarter taxes also by that due date. But if you fail to file the assessment by the end of the first quarter, then the law empowers the Commissioner General to go in and assess you provisionally. We have moved from the system where from the beginning of the year, then the Commissioner General assesses mostly the SMEs. No. By virtue of the provision of the law, the Commissioner General will only come in after the self-assessment period elapses and you have not filed. Then the Commissioner General, because needs the assessment, needs to ensure that there's certainty as to what you are to pay, will assess you and you will see it on your portals. Right now, most taxpayers, at least majority, have signed onto the taxpayers portal. You would see the assessment notices on your portal as well as other notices so that you can go ahead. And so if the Commissioner General assesses you, people still have that mandate to object if need arises. But we need to object within the time limit of 30 days and provide reasons, because you need to apply in writing, providing reasons why you are objecting to it. And then I basically tell people that then project something for us to know and then pay. But you need to also, before GRA goes in to determine your objection, to have paid 30% of the amount that has been assessed on you by the Commissioner General to give us the mandate to go ahead and determine the objection. And I guess this provision in our law has been buttressed by the ruling recently that said, yes, taxpayers need to pay the 30% before GRA can go ahead and determine the objection. So basically, I think the education for self-assessment I can say maybe it has not gone down well. So it goes on GRA to ensure that we educate the people, and particularly the SMEs. They don't no longer have to wait for GRA to assess them so that they will complain that we did not receive assessments and so forth. I guess for now, I will rest my case. If anything else comes up, I should say.
Okay, let me say, so Vivian, from what I'm
Yeah.
gathering from you, really, for certain lines of, especially service providers, we need to have a tax GRA letter pending. Every time we file, then we submit the request for the extension, because invariably, for some of our clients, they will not be paying you even within 4 months, although you've delivered the service. So be ready to be bombarded with letters requesting for extension.
Gifty, can I go ahead?
Yes, please do. Please
Yes,
do.
yes. I guess that is also going to be a challenge for GRA, but I think for VAT is not the only tax type that taxpayers are expected to pay. We also have the corporate taxes, we have the PAYE, we have other CST, we have excise taxes and the rest. So if let's say you are given that mandate, you have installment agreements, and then it is spread out for you. It could be spread out that you pay on monthly basis this amount, or you pay by the end of the year, or the end or the period end of the 4th month. And for your information, all these arrangements are factored in the system against the taxpayer's ledger. So where the installment agreement says that you are to pay maybe 200,000 every month by a certain date, and you default in paying, automatically the law says that all other amounts that are supposed to be paid in subsequent months become due and payable immediately. So that means that you have defaulted and you have failed in meeting the agreement that had been reached with GRA. So you need to pay everything at once. And at times, it is not the law, but our policies at times can say that you can ask the taxpayer to look for money from elsewhere and meet up. But as I rightly said, if let's say you are giving 4-month extension and you dutifully abide by it, if you are having a challenge, you must reach out to GRA before the time for the payment. Then GRA will go ahead and depending on the merit of the case, maybe extend it. But the extension can only go for a period of 12 months. But at the TSC level, they have a mandate for 4 months. And if it goes beyond that, it will go to the area directors, because now we have the area concept of areas where the area directors are responsible for a certain number of TSCs within their tax jurisdiction. Or it will go to the Commissioner DTRD, that's Domestic Tax Revenue Division, or it might even be escalated to the Commissioner General himself. So we know that people might take advantage of it, and people who genuinely do not have an issue. So with me, maybe when you come to me with an issue, you apply, yes, I will engage you, but I would want to know if indeed you don't have the resources to pay. We will judge on it. If you have, maybe some people at times they always go for a facility from the financial institutions to support their operations. So maybe, yes, you are looking at going for the facility. So you expect that normally the bank, it takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks to process it. So we would schedule your repayment terms on that basis. So it behoves on you to ensure that you don't default. But you don't just make it a point that every time I file, but I will delay the payment, I'll go in for installment agreement. We would at times maybe have to send people to come investigate. We'll do some invoice invigilation sort of to see the invoices that you got, how it has, whether indeed it has been issued out, and maybe your bank statements to verify the inflows and the rest. Because, like you just said, it is one area that people can take advantage of it to the disadvantage of GRA. Madam Gifty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Vivian, so much for that education as well. And if I think that's a subtle warning for you that you can come, but don't come too often.
Don't come too
So
often, yes.
I
Well,
think
you see, some of the challenges, I mean, I have a client, for instance, who was assessed with corporate income tax at the beginning of the year. So, they got an invoice to pay their quarterly amount, which they were paying diligently. In September of this year, the GRA has tripled the corporate income tax that they think this company should pay. And that is September. And the expectation was that these entities are supposed to sort of be able to forecast and pay certain amounts diligently. So if JRA comes to that kind of company in September, saying that the amount that they were supposed to pay quarterly has suddenly changed, and so now there's a debit on their GRA account, that sort of situation does not make the relationship with GRA and with tax paying easy and seamless, the way that the GRA would prefer business entities to feel about the payment of tax. So that is an example of a challenge.
Okay, Gifty, can I go ahead and respond to it?
please do, please do.
Yes, as I said, the default assessment is the self-assessment for everyone. So where the Commissioner General comes in after the end of the first quarter, where the taxpayer fails to file the self-assessment estimate, unless there is some information contrary to what we have. But I will again say that if there's any revision to the notice of assessment, there will be reasons to support why it has been increased. I cannot sit here and say no, because normally in the course of the current year, whatever assessment is given out, if it's coming from the Commissioner General's end, then it is basically a provisional thing. It's an estimate. So if Commissioner General chances on some information and decides to increase it, they would attach reasons why it has been done. But nothing stops the taxpayer from visiting the TSC to know the reason behind the increase. Because if it has to do with maybe previous year's performance, things could have changed in the current year. But the office would have to engage the taxpayer, and both of them will agree on why the office is stepping up that assessment to that level, as is an estimate. But anything short of that, I guess the taxpayer, if let's say the taxpayer was assessed maybe in March or in April, or let's take it to be in April because Commissioner General's assessment will come in after the end of the first quarter. Then from that time, normally the provision for objection, it should be 30 days. Then it makes it a little difficult. But where there's a new objection, where there is a new new assessment, the taxpayer, I think, has the right to, object to it. But before then, I would the taxpaying public is here present, but I don't know whether GRE is on, so that I would actually advise that they should always engage the taxpayers and whenever there's a need, especially to increase the Commissioner General's assessment in the current year.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So GRA community, that's the plea from Vivian for consistency. Nina, I think you have something to say, right? Please go ahead.
My question is to Vivian, and I'm sorry if I'm taking you back a bit. There was a point you made about going to the local TSC office and applying for an exemption. Is this done organization by organization or sector by sector? If there's an exemption on something that applies to a sector in its entirety, can one organization apply for an exemption? I don't know if
Nina, it is
yes.
not applied to sector. If it's a sector issue, then there will be a provision in the law that will cover the sectors. Like previously, we had certain sectors that were carrying forward losses for 5 years. Then it applies to all stakeholders in that sector. But for the exemption, it's on individual basis, not individual as an individual, but taxpayer per taxpayer, because your case might be different from the other cases. And so you need to apply, stating the reasons why you project, and then you'll be showing proof of previous transactions that you had, and then the withholding taxes that have been withheld to support your application. So they will see there's a trend in your operations over the years when you file your returns, they are able to see the trend in operations. So they know that at the end of it, this is the turnover, this is the expenditure level, and this is what comes out. So if you are being made to pay, let's say 3%, 5%, or 7%, or depending on whatever it is, and it will actually take a lot of your cash. I mean, it will affect you in terms of the cash flow. Then it will be dealt with differently. But on the level, at GRA level, there are internal policies that has been fashioned to enable us. I mean, it's a standard, this thing that helps us to identify who merits that exemption. Your transaction should be, I mean, it should be that transaction that when the money is taken, the withholding is deducted, it will affect your operations. We have evidence to support the transactions that you have done in the past, and their withholding that has been deducted, and which, when we compare it to the nature of your operations, it will definitely affect your operations. So it's on individual basis and not under a sector. Those that are under sectors are provisions in the law that would maybe affect the sectors, and then you can come under it and enjoy it.
When it comes to withholding, when it comes to withholding, it's quite clear. The airline will pay a travel agent an agreed amount of commission. The airline withholds the withholding tax at source and pays the travel agent net. And then provides us with a TCC later. Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. It takes months to get them, but we do get it eventually. So that is one. The issue is about the VAT, but the explanation that you've given is well understood, and I will definitely look into that.
Yes, and Nina, I want you to go to the issuance of the tax credit certificate after you have withheld and paid over to DRA. That is basically a thing of the past. We have automated a system. The withholding agents, or you as the withholding agent, as you will withhold from the capital sum that you are paying to your clients, your agents, you withhold from it. You would need to file a return by the 15th of the ensuing month. I mean, the month following the month in which the transaction took place. You need to file a return, and in the schedule, you have to provide, every field must be completed with the details of the withholdee, with the details of his TIN or Ghana card, then the contract sum, then the rate at which this thing was withheld, then the tax component. And when that is filed and the payment also effected, we have a system inbuilt system mechanism that will process it, and automatically, so long as we have the taxpayer's TIN, the taxpayer, if not on our system, all taxpayers who have registered and have the TIN and registered at ORC already is at the back end of our system. So when the person is not even in the system, as soon as that TIN pops up, we are able to activate it. And then the transaction from the withholding, that was the withholding tax, would then automatically reflect in the taxpayer's ledger. So issuance of tax credit certificates for people, for residents in Ghana, is no longer what we write out or print out for them from the office. So that issue about the delays in issuing the tax credit certificate is no longer a thing that taxpayers are experiencing or withholding agents are experiencing. We basically came out with that to ensure that there's convenience to everybody. The taxpayers will not have that issue of having a lot of money locked up in tax credit certificates, and they need a clearance which is time bound, and they will not be able to process it. So that has come to address the issue. So Nina, the withholding taxes, as soon as payment is made, file with the correct details of the people. As soon as payment is made after you have filed, it will reflect in the individual withholdees accounts, their ledgers.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I think the message is saying, and GRA, I mean, kudos for the portal, the
Yes.
digital filing. I think
Yes.
there's a lot of convenience around it. So good job there. But I think let me try and put together what we've been discussing in the last few minutes, right? The pain that we noticed across Ifwa Nina, I think it was a very similar song we were all singing around cash flow, right? And for taxpayer, for our audience, what Vivian is telling us is that there is an avenue, there's a window. If you think you have a problem, you can walk up to the GRA and ask for variation on how you pay. But I think to Vivian's rescue as well, one thing is clear, and also on the cash flow, the law, and Vivian, that's something I would wish for you to also maybe emphasize, that sometimes the law is how it is drafted, right? Sometimes you see the VAT law in the CIT drafted such that they don't really, I think that's inherent. So that is why Vivian is probably saying, okay, we will look at case by case basis. So that if you naturally have a 60-day payment period with your customer, they probably are not going to wait for you every day to pay VAT in 60 days, right? So it's case by case. So I think that the point there for the audience, one, know that there's a room for you to go walk to the JRA to negotiate on payment period. And then you have to know the law to the very basic that you can, because sometimes there are avenues to address some issues that you may not know. So I think with that, I would want us to shift our focus slightly on what is something that is also very critical for SMEs, for women entrepreneurs, and on taxes. I'm moving slightly to the informal sector because we play a very critical role as women and as entrepreneurs. So let me come to Nina. Let me start with you there. What do you think is the problem with? I know you're in the formal sector, but you know, if the informal sector pays their taxes, there will be less pressure on you. So the GRA is not always coming to you that they can identify and find, right? What do you think is the main issue? Why, from where you sit, from how you feel, what do you think is the main issue why there's a struggle in getting the taxes that's due from the informal sector?
Thank you, Gifty. I work in the formal sector, but I work very closely with a side of us that is not, which is informal. If you are a non-IATA travel agent, not registered with the International Airline Transport Association, you can be what we call a briefcase travel agent. They are usually men, but there are quite a number of women there. So they don't have an office. They have a laptop. They sit anywhere, book a ticket, and transact. There are quite a number of women here, and so there is a space of travel agency business whereby, and such people may even work with an established agency like ours. Why would an agency not formalize their business? Is because they can actually get away with it. Because sometimes then it begs the question why one agency would formalize their operations, pay taxes, pay people, and then you have another agency just working from office to office trying to get by. There are some things that Vivian has said that in due course, by the time you have registered your company, in due course, you might want one or two things to be done. And once your TIN number is aligned to your Ghana card, things are having to move from the informal side. I'm talking purely about the travel space here. In time, you might want to apply for a corporate account, and having a TIN number, having certain documentation which are regulatory in place comes in. And so you might find it necessary. One who is applying operating in the informal way may soon find it necessary. Some operators have gone so far without trying to formalize their operations because they found, I mean, this forum that you are provided becomes very, very helpful. And I'm sitting here thinking, is there more that we can ask Shika and her team to do? Because to even get us to talk to GRA, as GRA is coming towards us, we are moving back. And yet the two parties must talk. The development in this country must actually go on. We all want good things. There was something that was said earlier on. We travel abroad and we see things being done, systems being automated. It does cost money. If we get to the stage where IFWA has just said that you can register a company within 48 hours, even if you can, you will have to pay for it. That process costs money, and so the education has to increase. There are things that I have learned. I've been running my own business for the past 13 years, and there's one thing that I have learned today, and I'm going to go back to Shika right after this meeting to get more info. There isn't a platform for us in the travel space. There is some association where people can go to go and get information, but perhaps the GRA can perhaps take a step forward to meet us, to meet people and say, and there are ways of finding out to say, look, we're not here to cause trouble. I mean, these are the things that are out there which you must comply with. That will hopefully help operators in my space to try and formalize what we do. Thank you.
I think it's a clear message, right? That others are flouting the rule without repercussions. So their data is not registered and has an advantage, an undue advantage in the business. And so that will keep going on in the informal sector. So a good note to that, hopefully we get to solve that. But I will go along the same line to you, Ifwa, still on the informal sector conversation. How do you think we can address this issue from where you sit?
For me, I think number one, to make the registration of the informal sector with regard to the GRE simpler. People in the informal sector may not necessarily have a certain high level of education. So in such circumstances, and especially now that we're all being given a Ghana card, right? Almost everybody has a Ghana card now. So then they have a TIN number. So the GRA then, and I think they've started doing that already, must go to those taxpayers. Now, if you go to the marketplace and you're going to try to register the market woman to pay taxes, there you have the challenge, like Nina has said, GRA moves forward and they're moving backwards. So then the issue of addressing this challenge really is about tax education. I think there should be more and more information about the need to pay taxes, why we pay those taxes, why you shouldn't sit down and wait for your neighbor to be paying tax for you to enjoy it. I think that mindset change of the need to pay tax is a critical element. So that's to do with tax education. Whether we have to create a particular focus where government and the GRA are using fellow women who are taxpayers to do the tax education to those in the informal sector. I think that would be a significant step to making them feel that, okay, I'm not in this alone and that this is something we're all doing together, because that connection makes it easy for them to appreciate the issue of paying taxes. So I've talked about registration being simpler and then education. I think those two things. And then I guess GRA officers also being softer. I know they have their targets to meet, and especially now with an IMF regime, the GRA is always under pressure to bring in the bucks, right? But I think they need to find a way, depending on which industry they are approaching, to have a softer approach to get people pulled in to pay those taxes. And especially now that everybody has a mobile phone. And on average, so many people use mobile money. Using that avenue to pay taxes is also a good thing. I mean, when e-levy came, we all were up in arms about it. Since the amount has been reduced to 1%, looking at the figures that have come earlier in this year, there's quite a huge chunk of money that government has generated through the e-levy, despite all the noise that we made about it. So really, there is an avenue and there is room for government to make more money from the informal sector. But that can only be done through better education and a softer approach.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, Vivian, be soft on us. That's the request. I'm sure Vivian personally is soft, but this is to the entire office of the authority.
And
So
especially,
maybe
and in particular, the informal. Yeah.
the informal. Okay, so be softer on the informal. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
a first.
And all of us. Gifty, don't twist my words. The
Okay,
informal
so
to
Vivian,
bring them
please listen
in,
to
but
it
they should
for
shelter
directly.
on
I'm
all
just
of us.
please listen to it for so that there's no reported speech. But I think if I raise one point that I would want us to probe a bit, there's the thing on with digitized things, and then there's this conversation around informal sector. Vivian, I'm coming to you in terms of what conversations goes on in your office in terms of any gap that will create for the informal sector who might not be technologically advanced or might not even have smartphones. You're talking about withholding certificate that is now on the portal. Has there been any thought around that gap or that particular population or sector that might not have the advantage of digital exposure?
Yes, we have seriously thought about that, and even with the VIT, that's the vehicle income tax, and even payment of the tax stamp by persons in the informal sector, particularly the women, folk, and the rest. We have the use of the USSD, that's the *222# which you go through the prompts on any young phone, any type of phone to make your payments. But for education on whether the person has a withholding tax here and there, I think that would not be evident. But even with a young phone, they can verify whether they have their withholding tax. There's a compliance. What their compliance status is concerning that. Vehicle income tax, they can also verify and they can also make payment. Their stickers are issued electronically, and the payment by the tax stamp, the formal sector, particularly in the market, is also by use of the young phone using the *222# to make payments. But maybe there's more to it. We need to simplify our tax laws. That maybe an abridged version of the laws would also help. We should have a lot of visibility around for everybody to see our flyers and things, and maybe come up with the flyers in a certain form that would educate them. They don't need to even ask, what is this about? And maybe with our tax education online, I've realized, particularly with the electronic media, the times at which GRA goes out to educate the public early in the morning, you find most of these people in the informal sector very busy. Some are already at to-do by 4 o'clock. They don't have time for listening to those things. Maybe we can shift it to the evening when everybody is comfortable at home, and then we can bring it across. We can also bring across the message in form of theater or something. So we need to, scale up. But we have also been doing this collaboration with various identifiable groups, the executives in particular, and we've had some opportunity with GIZ sponsoring it, Send Ghana, and at least I've participated in quite a number where they bring the people from all walks of life, the identifiable groups, the women, the leaders, and the rest, and we engage them. And surprisingly, each time there is this forum, they will tell you that they never knew about income tax. All they knew was about the fees and things the district assemblies, municipal and metropolitan assemblies collect from them. And they are so well versed in what the assemblies are taking from them, because apparently they engage them before the fees are set. They have the data on them. There's a database on all of them. There's a collaboration where at one point I realized that the assembly, that was particularly in reference to Tema Metropolitan Assembly, they engage some of these groups, people into fish processing also. They help them in improving the preservation methods that they were using. They even showcased, there were infographics on how they had helped them over the years, moving from drying their fish by the roadside to setting up the choco smoker. And now they have even enhanced to another level where there will be no smoke. It is a smoke-free. And they have even gone ahead to sponsor some of them to the Philippines to learn the trade and everything there. So in fact, this alone would drive the informal sector, these identifiable groups, very close to the assembly, because it looks as if they are part of their business and they know what is going on and they can see evidence of what the assembly is doing to help them. At that forum, I told them that it's just unfortunate. Mine is on a national level, and it's like a national cake which has to be distributed to everybody. So there's no way I can say, sitting at where I was, to say that this amount goes to you, it goes to this group, it goes to a consolidated fund. And it's a bit difficult for me. But I told the assembly that, in fact, I envied them where they were, because they have that collaboration. And this is something that we also need to learn. We used to do this collaboration with the identifiable groups, but ours was on a different level, where we're giving out our receipt books to them and they were collecting on our behalf, but payment became an issue. They hardly came in to pay, and that arrangement had to be stopped. But we have revisited, we are still working with them, the market women, shoe sellers, the butchers, so many of them. And for some time during the COVID, all these payments had to cease. So we are restarting and then engaging them and making them understand the use of their young phones and everything. But even then, at a point, we were also comparing what we were doing to what the assembly was doing. They said the assembly comes and you use your thumb, it's I think the e-switch system or something, and that is it, you'll get their receipt. But with us, when we go in, they would have to engage them. They will go through the system, do the star 222 hash, and it's a prompt leading from this to this, which, like you rightly said, if the person is not literate, it will become a bit difficult, challenging for them to go through the process. So we are building on it, because the VIT also had an initial challenge. We tried, and then we had to come with a sticker from the office, but we have moved on and it's now electronic. So definitely we are going ahead. We are actually improving upon our business process. That's how come we have the ETCC, we have e-filing, we initiate payments from our end, or from the taxpayer's phone. They generate the tax bill, go to any of the designated banks, make payments, or they can as well use their mobile to make payments. GRA is actually progressing with all these business processes to help the taxpayer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Vivian.
Thank you.
So I think let's switch a bit to the audience. I don't know if from the audience we can take some questions at this point and come back to other discussion. Audience, you can either raise your hand, the digital hand up, or type your message. Our admin team, please help me. I don't see any question in the chat box yet, but see if you can see something. Let's know. Okay. The audience, if there's anybody who has a question, you can raise your hand up and then we can take it. But otherwise, we would continue for now. Okay. So I think I want to. There are two dimensions to this discussion, right? I think we've done a lot of justice to the tax education. Let me come to you, Ifwa. From your general feel of things, do you think that our tax system is progressive in terms of gender considerations? And take it from your personal view on what should be and what is. Right. I don't expect, but it's just a feel from where you sit. It's not technical in terms of tax law provisions, but from your experience, you feel there's any gap at all?
I think from my perspective, I don't think the challenge is a gender issue. I mean, the tax requirement is one that we must all comply with. So I'm personally not somebody who's going to sit here and advocate that men should pay or men-owned businesses should pay 25% corporate tax and women should pay 15. I won't sit here and say that. But the point remains that women should rather be supported and women to include, to promote financial inclusion, right? Because the women-owned businesses, whether they are into agro business, whether they are trying to get into the financial sector, we are all moving and pushing for women being in every sector within the country. We are not seeking to limit women to being hairdressers or being market women. We want them to be in every type of industry. So if the petrochemical industry, for instance, or the financial sector has a particular levy, for instance, there's a recent levy that banks and financial institutions and petroleum sector industries are supposed to pay, which the rest of us do not pay. Do you then say that for women in that sector, they should be given a different tax rate? I don't think that is what we are seeking to promote as women who are pushing for equality. So as we speak, I think the tax laws are not gender-based, and I do not think that they should become so. What it is it should still be an issue of sector-specific tax exemptions, and then women being supported the other way, especially with regard to their finances, whether they get access to capital, whether government has a specific agenda to let certain institutions give more financial assistance to women-owned businesses. Because the average woman really does want to get on her own 2 feet. She doesn't want hand-me-downs, right? So let's focus more on that to get that woman to be independent and get that woman to be able to run her business efficiently. Once that is done, if government decides that it's going to reduce taxes on a specific sector, whether you're a man or a woman, it's going to benefit you. So that is my take on the current situation in regard to taxes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Right. There's a very fine line, like how Ifa puts it. We are strong to sit on the same seat. So it's a question of defining the metrics well. But as we said, there are explicit and implicit. But I mean, thank you, Ifa. It's a matter of okay, what can we learn? Not necessarily what we can, the easy way to us on taxes, right? So thanks, Ifa. That's Safeway's view. I would open it up, Nina, Vivian, if you have anything to add on or another angle to this, any of you to this angle, what Ifa has said, you can do that. Any of you, yeah. Nina, you are
Okay,
muted
let me
or
come.
okay.
Okay.
I always forget. Sorry.
Okay, I think that was
So
Yes, I want to give this aspect about the sector-specific tax exemptions, and we seriously have it in the laws. When we go to our sixth schedule of Income Tax Act 2015 Act 896, we have a particular, I mean, various sectors. We have the agri sector, where we have the cash crops, we have the poultry, we have this thing. They have an exemption of 5 years from commencement of operations. And then after that 5 years, they also have another 5 years incentive, location incentive that also helps them in managing their business for some time. So this one also works like, it will not be government doling out, but I mean, there's an exemption. Initially, it's not a total exemption. They pay a concessionary rate. Initially, it was 1%, and the recent mid-year review, it was taken up to 5% of their business profits. So it's lower than the normal tax rate of 25%. So it's a bit of a savings for them. Those in tree crops, they have 10 years exemption period where their concessionary rate is also 5%. We have those in the agro processing. Their concessionary rate is also 5%. So it's like sector-based. We have those dealing with the rural banks, those who are setting up the rural banks. They have a 10-year period where they pay tax at the rate of 5%, and afterwards they revert to the normal one, which is 25%. We have those in the young entrepreneurs below the age of 35 in a certain sectors. So it's also like sector-based. But I guess most people are not aware about this young entrepreneurs provision that says that they apply. They basically work. They don't even they are not taxed at 5%. It's a total exemption for a period of 5 years for them. 5 years or 10 years. Gifty. Is it 5 or 10 years for them?
5 years.
5 years for them
Yeah,
in the sector. So if you come under this, it gives you a breathing space to be able to rally around and put your things. At least the business will start from the scratch, get to that level where it can now operate and then make profits. And then you start paying taxes. We have the free zone enclave, free zone businesses, the free zone developers, and as well as operators. They also have 10 years exemption. Theirs is also total exemption, and afterwards they revert to a tax which is even lower than the normal, which is 15%. We have those who are into waste processing, the recycling of plastic and this. All these are actually geared towards environmental sanitation and the rest, but it also gives the companies a leeway to grow their business up to a point before they start paying those who are processing the cocoa byproducts. There are so many things in this particular section. There's the sixth schedule of the Act, which is helping industries to make it. And we have, the petroleum sector, we have some of them also having their separate agreements. And it's also to help them grow their business because that is capital intensive. We have so many sectors that, and some are total exemptions and the rest that you find in the Act, and others, at the point I talked about the carry forward of losses, we had the special sectors that had, they could roll over, they could transfer losses up to 5 years. And then, but now every business, all other businesses at that time was 3 years, but now they can, losses can be carried forward for 5 years for everybody, for that means all sectors. And so many, the universities, they also have their provision, especially those are registered by guarantee and the rest. And then there are so many provisions. I think maybe once a while or maybe every month, or we should have a slot with maybe some media houses and be putting it across so that the attention can be drawn to it, the various groups, the various sectors can get an understanding. But I also want to say that because we have the various accounting firms, the law firms and the rest who are partners in this business in national development, I think they can also, I would advise that most people would engage consultants to help them, but especially when they are setting up businesses, as we are looking at the UK, maybe taxpayers, investors coming in. We should know that Ghana, the ease of doing business, the ranking has improved very much, and we are thinking of them in so many ways. There are investment opportunities that in the laws that all they need to do is to maybe come to GRA. Yes, that's the first point of call. We'll give you the education, but there are other consultants who are also doing likewise, but for a fee. And then we have the DIPC that they can also approach for some exemptions. They have the 1D, 1F that they can also see the ministry responsible for some exemptions and concessions. So government is just not all out to milk anyone. We have concessions in the law. We have exemptions. We have the manufacturing and where to cite it, your manufacturing company, and then get some rebates in terms of the taxes, the tax rate that is applicable. As I talked about the location incentives, they are also, the rates are different from the normal rates that we have. And depending on where you are coming from as an investor, if the country has a double taxation agreement with Ghana. You also stand to benefit in terms of some of the rates. Yes, the tax corporate rates might be different. The withholding tax rates basically are different. So I would also encourage each and every one, especially those who are literate, to buy the laws, review it themselves. But if we have any challenge, I've talked about GRA as the first point of call. We are there to give you the needed education. You can also have a consultant for the other side. And also, I talked about DIPC and then the ministry responsible for 1B1F. So there are so many opportunities. Yes.
Under the tax law. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So our dear SMEs out there, please take advantage of them. I think that's the point. Don't assume that is the standard business, the standard their incentive. So take advantage and approach the right people and ask the right questions. So we have a question from the audience that's coming back to you, Vivian. But before then, Nina, did you have something to say before?
I wonder, am I audible now? Okay. After Vivian has spoken, after Vivian has spoken, I wonder whether there's anything else that I can add to the subject here. But so the only thing that I was saying was that in trying to bring on board the informal sector, in defining the matrix, I believe that it is education. And when I talk about education, I mean education that is coming right down. If you're talking about the plantain, the lady who grows plantain by the side of the road, what language can we use to engage her, to understand what you're saying? There was one thing that Vivian said, perhaps to put it into theater. And if it needs to go down there to drive the message home, then perhaps, because sometimes the irony of the informal sector is that unfortunately they would be the least literate, and yet the information that is going out there, B1, B2, what basically, simply, are we saying to the tomato seller? What must she do to be part of this discussion and be able to fall in line? Is where perhaps, I mean, there are things that anybody wanting to come and do business here. Yes, you want to have your business registered in the shortest possible time. You want to start, you want to engage people. But if you're already here, if you're selling pure water, if you're hustling by the side of the road, what language can the GRA use to engage these ordinary folk to come on board? That is the statement. I think Vivian has said enough, but that is what I had to say before she has spoke.
Yes, Gifty, can I go on? Can I go ahead?
Okay.
Yes, more often than not, we have all these people applying their trade by the roadside, belonging to various associations. So we deal with associations, we deal with their executives, and to get the information down. But GRA would definitely go ahead to have the laws simplified in some selected local dialects. But in terms of where we use our megaphones mounted on our vehicles, we have the information in different languages. And we have it in the Akan, we have Ga, we have Hausa, basically about 3 or 4, where we engage them, particularly maybe with going to the market. And I also always encourage the use of the market radio stations where you can reach out to the people in the market. Tema, they have a radio station within the market. So if you want to reach out to them, yes, when you mount a canopy and with your megaphones and the rest, and you are talking, you will not find them leaving their wares to come and sit under the canopy and listen to you. But when you reach out to them via their FM station in the market, they will definitely hear what you have to say. And then we also use the market queens and they most of them, but I think yes, basically that. But I think GRA will definitely come out with the abridged versions in some different local dialects, and that would also reach a larger audience. And as I said, maybe the electronic media can be done in the evenings. The various stations that can, broadcast in the local dialects would also be one issue that will help. And I also want to say that the people by the roadside, those in the small scale businesses, are not expected to pay the taxes at the rates that we see. It's the 25% for entities and the rest, and then those for the other ones on graduated rates. No, we have a modified taxation for the informal sector. And that we have it on installments. There are 3 types under the modified taxation on installment basis, where taxpayers whose income is not above 20,000, they are assessed by various. It's something that has been in existence. Some of them pay 20 cedis per quarter, some 30, some 50, depending on the group they belong to make it easier for them. And I always tell most of them who come to the office and engage me that we can have a small susu box and then set it aside. Maybe every day you can decide to put 1 CD, or maybe at the end of the week you put a CD in it, depending on how much you're paying. And you realize that at the end of the month, you might have more than enough, or at the end of the 3 months, which is a quarter, you have more than enough and easily pay off without any stress. And most of them, when I tell them and we go through it, using even, let's say, 20 days out of the 30 days, because you cannot have them working 30 days, 20 days in a month out of the 30 days, or even at times 10, they realize they're able to make it. Some they'll tell you, oh, I can already put 5 CDs even aside every day. And it makes it easier. It just needs a little education, and then they are able to go along with you. So we have the payment by installment.
That's fine from all means.
And then we have the
That's
cash.
speaking their language, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Come down to everybody's level. I think that's
exactly.
the yes.
Exactly.
And thank you for that. So let me
Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying that I always make it a point that anybody who walks into my office will not leave the same. I need to impact the person with what I should have normally or necessarily done, so that the person leaves satisfied. If even the person is paying the taxes and it feels it's a difficult thing, the person is comforted to know what exactly he or she is about and why you need to pay it.
Thank you very much. We need that. So thank you. So let me get this question is coming. I'm still staying on you, Vivian. This question is coming to you. It's the question I think you preempted. So the first part was about SMEs, the tax incentives. I think you've done justice to it. You read the person's mind. But the second part is asking about how involved are women in decision making at the higher level in tax administration. Balanced. So from your perspective, the question is, in terms of tax administration decision making, how involved are women? And how is GRA given a gender balanced sort of brainstorming when it's that? So over to you, Vivian.
And tax administration, surprisingly, in GRA, we have quite a number of women at not exactly at decision level, but at the middle level where they superintend over operations in the TSEs. In Greater Accra, quite a number of women are there. I cannot speak for the rest of the country. So for Greater Accra, we are looking at the tax population of about 80% of what the whole nation is about. And I think we engage them, and we also make recommendations to the board, and then finally it gets to the tax policy units at the Ministry of Finance for them to capture. That's how come the modified taxation, and I can say I was part of the project that went into it. We are trying to get it operational so that everybody would have, because it's becoming a little difficult in being able to assess the average. If the person does not keep records, does not file returns, you will not be able, that means you'll be doing guesswork. So that is where we have a little difficulty in looking at the average for the 3 months to be able to identify whether the person will be pay modified tax under installment or under turnover or under modified cash basis, especially for businesses with a source in Ghana and they are not into the high end. Their turnover is not, the profit aspect is not that high, and they don't have outlets, more than one outlet, they don't have more than one businesses, and they are not professionals or those sort of criteria. So we making recommendations because I'm not up there. I'm also in the middle of this thing, but we make recommendations. So
Okay.
gradually,
All right.
we would have
it's a journey, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's a journey.
Yeah.
But aside that, even at our sector ministry, we have women there. We have deputy ministers who are women. And then we have the board. We also have women from the informal sector, from the various ministries represented. And I think much has been done about that. And I guess, as you rightly said in the beginning about the sanitary parts, it has been the governments that has heard the voices of the masses and has pushed this through. So there's so much, and I think the Minister for Finance also made mention of the modified taxation once again in his delivery at Parliament, the budget reading. So we are actually looking at the informal sector. We know it's difficult, but it is actually a matter of education and the education on record keeping, because that is where it counts, it starts. If they are able to keep credible records, nobody will pay a penny more or a penny less to government in terms of taxes, because we are talking of issue of fairness, and we are also making everything very convenient for them. And GRA is poised to ensure that everyone who earns income and must pay, unless the person is exempt from tax, also contributes to what we need in the coffers. And I always say that for a country to develop, taxation is a sacrifice everyone must be prepared to pay. I hope we would not want to go cap in hand continually begging. Our president has already said we want a Ghana beyond aid. So we need to ensure that this thing is inculcated in each and every citizen to ensure that we are basically aware of the need to contribute our quota towards national development.
Right. Thank you very much. I think need I say more? Vivian she rounds it up for us nicely. Tax is a sacrifice. We should all be willing to pay our quota towards us. So thank you. I think that wraps it out for us. The time is not on our side. We will also go on to maybe Nina Ifwa. Let me take some final words from you as well. Nina, maybe take it from this angle as to what would be your advice for women entrepreneurs in this space of finance tax? If there were some key takeaways, what would be your key ones for women entrepreneurs?
If as a female entrepreneur, you're going to build a successful business that's going to be able to be beneficial to yourself and others, then you will have to comply with the regulations of the industry and the country that we are in. We would need to be compliant. We would need to grow our business and grow a country so that we'll be in a position whereby you can start with just one person, and in a few years' time, you've got a number of people who are working for you, and your business is actually supporting them and their dependents. That would be my advice.
Your takeaway. Thank you so much, Nina. And Ifwa, please final words. And as you finalize it, give us pushing the role of women, getting more involved in the national discourse around these topics. Just fuse that in that's fine nicely for us as you wrap up. But your final words.
Okay, so my final words for women entrepreneurs, I think for me, the key thing is to get assistance, get help. There is help out there, and in particular, depending on what level you're at, you can get a friend who's an accountant. It's not all the accounting firms that are PwCs and KPMG. There are smaller accounting firms that can help us to look at our books, look at our
If I
accounts.
do that,
So personally, I'm not a mathematician, but I've engaged a tax consultant who looks at my books every day and tells me what I need to pay to GRA. Whether at that particular time I can pay that amount is a different conversation. But the point is, they keep you on track and keep you on your toes. We want to build bigger businesses as women, and so we need to do the right thing. For instance, I mean, if you're trying to respond to an RFP that you've seen in the newspaper, and you actually think, oh my gosh, I can actually do this job, but how am I going to do it? You need to get a tax clearance certificate, but you haven't been filing your taxes. Immediately, that puts you on a back foot. So my advice to women businesses, number one, is to get the assistance when you need it. If you can't get a professional assistance, then walk to the GRA and hopefully, and I think not even hopefully, I am sure of it, you'll get at least one tax officer who's willing to help you through the process and tell you the right thing that you need to do. Now, moving that into the second part of your question, which was, please remind me what it was about, the second part.
Mom, how do we get involved in the discourse around this women getting involved in the tax and finance space?
Well, I think already, like Vivian has mentioned, we have women in significant leadership roles from the Ministry of Finance itself at the GRA. GRA's board has women on there. The point remains that women tend to be scared of certain subject matters, right? That's why there's that encouragement for women in STEM, women to get into maths, women to get into sciences, women to get into taxation. Personally, I hear of taxation and any law to do with taxation, and I'm sort of creeping silently away from it. But invariably, you realize that the more you deal with the subject matter and you get to understand it and comprehend it, it's easier for you to deal with the situation. So my advice to women in the higher up position is to do things that will help promote women businesses. It may not always be through taxation or trying to lower taxes, but to help the agency that you sit on, whether it's a board, whether it's a government agency, or in your role, to do things that will help women businesses or women in the younger generation to also come up, and especially paying attention to those sectors that deal with STEM subjects. So for parents of young children, for instance, encourage your children to do those STEM subjects and not walk away from them. It helps. And I'm particularly an admirer of women in STEM. So those are my
Thank you. Thank you
Madam
so
Gipsy,
much. Yes,
Madam Gipsy, I know time is fast spent, but I just want to chip in
go ahead.
this, that at the GRA level, we even have our ladies club that also goes out to carry out tax education. And currently we have the Society of Women in Taxation, an arm of the Institute of Chartered Institute of Taxation. And they also reached out. I think recently they were at the Medina Market to carry out some form of tax education. So there are lots coming up. And now also as AFOA is a lawyer, they have what they call the pro bono. Maybe we can have all those who have some idea about tax also carrying out this thing, visiting the various identified groups and lending support to them, to educate them, take them through the processes, especially the basis of the record keeping and all other things that they need to do. And the GRA will also take it up with the simplification of the tax system, and then the information that must consistently go out to educate them. And then we also have the relationship concept in GRA, relationship managers. So we will have to whip that up for them to reach out to more of their clients, the taxpayers, so that constant education would actually help us. And then review of the tax laws when it becomes necessary to help the SMEs. Thank you.
Yes.
So big message out there, please, our women entrepreneurs, get comfortable with taxes and tax dialogue. So with that, we want to draw the curtain for today. Thank you, our audience. I think there's no other questions. So thank you so much for staying with us. We appreciate your time. And to our panelists, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insights, your contribution, sharing your experiences. And we hope that when the UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce knocks at your door again, you would embrace it. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. With that, I'll charge all of us, we go and do things differently, embrace the tax conversations, and try and minimize your exposure to taxes and pay your taxes the correct way. So with that, have a good day, and we will meet again in the next quarter. Yes, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a good
Madam Gift.
afternoon.
Thank you.